Hi everyone. Today we learn the Earth's layers. So let's just talk about what is Earth made up of, right? Or how many layers does the Earth have? When you see a Earth, you just we tend to draw a circle and we try to color water and land and we try to make it as blue color. So that's what our knowledge of Earth is. Okay, Earth is blue in color, and when you look at the Earth's layers, when somebody asks, does Earth have various layers? You need to think, okay, why will Earth have various layers? Or does it have various layers and why? So we are going to go in depth. So what are Earth's layers made of? Earth has many dramatic physical features. So obviously, when you look at our Earth, there are some areas which are the landscapes are different from the other, right? It can be a desert, it can be a swamp, marshes, it can also be a farmland, right? It can also be a plateau, maybe mountains, hills, right? So there are different physical features that we see on Earth, right? Then we see rivers, and we see lakes, then we see oceans. So there are various physical features on Earth, right? And why is that each feature is different from other? How is it forming different? These are all the things that we learn when we look into Earth's layers, okay? So let's see. I'm going to read the passage. Follow with me. Earth has many dramatic physical features. Landforms such as plateaus, mountains, plains, and valleys are all over the world. But these features did not develop immediately. So now this is what we are supposed to understand, that these features, all the features that we see around us when you step out of the house, they are all developing as days go by without even we knowing that there are changes that are happening. Okay, small changes over millions of years have eventually produced landscapes. So when you see Grand Canyon, when you go to Yosemite, right? When you go to Himalayas, mountains, or the Hawaii Islands, they have not just formed in a day or two. It is a process that started off, and then eventually you had the Himalayas, which are still, they're saying that it still is growing in height, right? So these features, all the land features that you see, they did not grow or they did not take place in a day or two. Earth also has important features under the ocean: mountain ridges, deep trenches, and even volcanoes that can be found under seas. So there are under the seas, when you go, to investigate or you want to know about what are the features that are under the ocean, you can also find mountain ridges, you can find deep trenches, you can also find volcanoes. In order to fully understand how all these geographic features developed, we need to understand the structure of the earth and the natural process that are constantly occurring around us. So if we have to understand in depth as to what and how these features are changing, how the landscapes are changing, what is the cause of the formation of different types of landscapes, we need to go in depth to analyze the earth's layers. So now let's do that. Earth's layers. Earth is composed of several layers. Not only these layers are solid, the atmosphere is above the surface of the air. Sorry, excuse me. The atmosphere is above the surface of the earth and is thin gaseous layer that permits the existence of the living things. We all know that the atmosphere above us has oxygen, and that is the only reason why we have all living things, including human beings, right? We are all on the earth and we are surviving because of the gas called oxygen. The layer of the earth that we live on is called the crust. This is the outermost solid layer of the earth. That means the place that we stand on, right? That is the earth's crust. The earth's crust is generally about 5 kilometers in thickness. Okay, so the crust is about 5 kilometers thick in places covered by ocean, and about 30 kilometers thick in places that are land. So if it is near the ocean, it is 5 kilometers, and if it is near the land, it is 30 kilometers thick. Although the crust seems thick to us, it is only a thin shell covering the earth. So for us, when you look up, hey, the earth's crust is pretty thick because I'm standing on it, right? The houses are constructed on it. So it should be thick. But on an overall view, the earth's crust is very thin shell that covers the earth. The layer below the crust is called, so just immediately on the place we stand, the next one what below that is called the mantle. And this layer is much thicker than the crust. So the crust where we stand, where we build our houses, where we park our cars, that is actually, is not that strong of that strong. It is having the very less amount of thickness, right, when compared to that of the mantle. The layer below the crust is mantle, and this layer is much thicker than the crust. The mantle is composed of several solids and liquid parts, and that makes up more than 80% of the Earth's mass. So mantle is the one that actually makes up 80% of the Earth's mass. The mantle extends to the depth about 2,900 kilometers below the crust. So where does the mantle be? Mantle is below the crust. So the first layer is a crust, the second layer is a mantle. The mantle has more amount of length or thickness than the crust. So I hope so far everybody is clear. So next one would be, let's scroll down. Once I finish this paragraph, I will pause the video. Okay. Earth's core is made up of inner core and outer core. So Earth has something called the inner core and the outer core. Okay. The core is the densest layer of the Earth. So inner core, that's the inner core, and that is the outer core. So outer core and inner core. Okay, so Earth has two cores, inner core and outer core. The inner core is the densest layer of the Earth and is mainly composed of iron and small amounts of nickel, sulfur, and radioactive materials. So that is something which you need to know when you're learning Earth's layers, which is very important. So Earth's core has two layers, inner core and outer core. The core that is densest, the core is densest layer of the Earth and is mainly composed, the core is always composed of iron, sulfur, nickel, and radioactive material. So that's something which you need to understand and remember. Okay? A combination of heat and pressure. So all this is happening, right? Because again, if you have done the rock cycle, you'll always know that these rocks are expanding, contracting, breaking into sediments. It's all because of the heat and the pressure, right? So the same thing happens in the inner core and the outer core. The combination of the heat and pressure makes outer core liquid. So because of the extreme heat, the rocks melt and they become liquid mass. The inner core is solid because the pressure is so much that the iron cannot melt. So outer core, again, this is something which is very important. You have to always remember the inner core is solid because the pressure is so great or so much that the iron, it will not allow the rocks to melt. Okay, the temperature of the core is about 5,000 degrees Celsius. So again, here there are a few important points that you need to remember and you need to understand. Earth's core is made up of inner core and outer core. The inner core is the densest of the Earth, okay, Earth's layer, and is mainly composed of what? It's mainly composed of iron, nickel, sulfur, radioactive materials. A combination of heat and pressure, okay, generally causes anything to make melt, okay, into a liquid mass. The inner core is solid because, why is the inner core solid? Inner core is solid because the pressure that is within the Earth core does not allow it to melt to a certain, and hence the temperature of the core is about 5,000 degrees Celsius. Humans have never seen Earth below the Earth's crust. So we have never gone. So we are always standing on the top of the crust and we are building our houses, watering the plants, parking our car, whatever we are doing on the Earth's crust. But we have never been below the Earth's crust. Okay. So if you see the diagram here, you can see that is the crust, right, where we stand. The crust is the outermost solid layer of the Earth. The crust is made mostly of oxygen and combined with other materials like silicon, aluminum, iron, and calcium. So the crust where we stand, it has oxygen. Obviously, we have oxygen in the atmosphere. Then we also have all these kind of minerals, silicon, aluminum, iron, and calcium. Okay, these are all inside the Earth. The inner core is solid metallic ball. The inner core, if you see here, that is a solid metallic ball. It is mainly made up of iron. Temperature in the inner core are above melting point. So it is above melting point. What about the outer core then? The outer core is a liquid mass around the inner core. So that's the outer core, and around the outer core, there's a liquid mass, which is the inner core. Okay? Mantle. Mantle is a solid middle layer below the crust. So just below the crust, we have a solid middle layer called mantle. It is mainly made up of, again, silicon, magnesium, iron, and oxygen, of course. Mantle. And then atmosphere. Earth's atmosphere is a thin layer of air above the crust. This layer contains nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and water. So if you are in 6th grade and you have to understand the Earth's layers, this is a place where you come and you can click so that you will have an understanding of it. And also there's a diagram that shows here. So make sure that you always come to this page and review your things, okay? So for now, that's it. That's part 1 of Earth's crust. Okay, and I will post part 2, and if possible part 3, along with certain set of questions, so that you can have a revision as to what you learned, and you will be ready for any kind of test quiz that is needed. Okay, bye guys.